Well, my name's John Pusey. I'm retired now, but the second half of my career I worked in the Bodleian Library, the main university library in Oxford. So I've been living in Oxford for 35 years now.
My name's David McCann. I'm retired as well. I was at one time working in books, but not for many years now. I've been in Oxford for 20 years, yeah.
Oh. How did you get involved in the gamelan in the first place?
Well, I suppose I was looking for something new musically. I was a little bit bored with what Western music offered, and there was a series of lectures about non-Western music being offered by the music faculty, and I managed to get to one or two of them, and the first one in fact that I went to was about gamelan, and they had a part of a set of gamelan instruments which had just arrived in Oxford. They'd been given by the Indonesian government. We're not quite sure where they got these instruments from, but they were free as far as the university was concerned. And the idea, I think, was that they wanted Indonesian culture to be displayed in the West. And although people had heard about gamelan, it's referred to in the encyclopedias and so on, there were no gamelan instruments in the West, and people thought this would be very difficult and expensive to import and transport gamelan instruments over here. But they had turned up in Oxford, and they persuaded Alex Roth, who was, I think, based in London, to come up as tutor, come up one evening a week, and a small group were learning. And they were the ones who were playing at this demonstration that I heard. And there had been one gamelan based in London that had been touring about a year before, and I'd been really fascinated by that the gamelan was being carried around the whole country, and I thought there would be no chance to play it. But when I heard about this group based at the music faculty, I asked could I join, and they said, well, you know, there's rehearsals at 4 o'clock, and this was in working hours, which was rather awkward. So I didn't really make 4 o'clock, but I managed to get along for 4:30. And played for a year or two very simple lanchurans, and I was usually, you know, a fraction of a beat late on every stroke, and but gradually got used to it, got used to the idea. Then we had a series of tutors, and visiting tutors. One left and somebody else took over, but we always had somebody who had some experience of seeing and hearing and playing gamelan in Java. So we were always getting some kind of feed at only one remove from Java, and they'd make little remarks about how people live in Java and how things are done. But the information was coming rather slowly, and so I decided that really I ought to go to Indonesia and find something out for myself. I think when I started to think that, I thought I would learn about gamelan. But in fact, gradually enough information came through about gamelan. Most of what I know about gamelan I've learnt in this country. There was a week-long festival in London in, I think, about 1991.
summer of 90.
90 was it? Island to island, they emphasising the idea of Java and Bali both being islands, and that they were feeding their ideas to Britain being another island. So that took things a lot further. And it took a long time before I ever got to Indonesia. I started to learn the language a little bit, not very seriously, but then I had to postpone the idea of travelling because I couldn't afford it. But I went on studying the language, and so in the end, when I did go, I had learnt enough Indonesian to travel around on my own. I didn't have to join an organised tourist tour. And by then, other gamelan players had made contacts in Java, and so I had some introductions. And I went out for 6 weeks and managed to visit, I stayed in Jogja for a time. I started off, let me think, first night was Bandung, no, first night was Bogor, and then the night in Bandung, and then I flew to Bali. Oh, and then I did a tour around the east, some of the eastern islands, to Sulawesi, to Ambon, to Banda, Kepulauan Banda, to Ternate, to Manado, Sulawesi, and back eventually to Jogja. Jogja, in fact, came last. And I've been back 4 times since then, and hope to go once more. So I've gotten much interested in a much wider range of things than gamelan. But it all started from gamelan. And meanwhile, when I'm at home here in Oxford, I've continued playing regularly. I haven't reached the more difficult levels of playing, but I still play regularly and enjoy it. What about David?
Well, I think my route in, I got interested in Orientalism like a lot of people my age many years ago, and that's where it sort of started. And I had read about gamelan before I'd even heard anything of it. However, in the autumn of 1975, I was in the habit of going to my local library and getting records out, and I got a compilation album out of music from all over the place by None Such Company. And I just put it on and listened to various stuff, and I'd recognised a bit of Balinese music because I'd heard that before. And then there came on this amazing, what I now know was Katawang Puspawarno, but I didn't know that at the time. And I didn't even know that it was, I couldn't connect it with Javanese music at all. I just thought, this is wonderful. It was exotic, evocative, intensely beautiful. It's the very famous record he made in 1971 at the Paku Alaman, the one that was sent out into outer space, if you remember. And I just thought, I've got to find out a bit more about this. And from there I went up to HMV in Oxford Street in London and got some records, and it progressed from there. And I would go every few months and get another record. And eventually I think I got practically every Javanese record that was on the market at the time. And in '79 there was a prom, part of a prom, which was performed by what was then called ASCII, and I went to that. And then in 1982 I went to the Durham Oriental Music Festival. That was the second time there'd been a gamelan at the Durham Festival. And I went to that and played a little bit. I'm pretty sure we played Bendrong, so very, very simple. And then I remember being there and being extraordinarily impressed by somebody doing a Gandhar solo. I thought, gracious me, that's complicated, that's wonderful. And they all went terribly quiet because there was nothing really much in the way of gamelan in this country. And like John, I went to the Island to Island Festival in 1990. And over the years, there was occasionally there'd be a Balinese group would come to London, and I went to that, a sort of dance performance thing, which was all right. And then in '91, I fetched up in Oxford, and there was a gamelan group here, and I joined that. And I've been in it ever since, so since '91, playing gamelan in this group. And started off just playing at the start on, and progressed from there, eventually taking up other instruments. And over the years it has become a sort of family, I would say. You mentioned how people get on, and I think since we've had a very stable group in more recent times, it's become more like a sort of family of us all, and we have parties and meet together for other reasons. We often play a little bit and eat a bit and drink and do some nice things like that and enjoy ourselves. But we still meet every week, of course, to play seriously, as it were. And I think even in the years that I've been here, the group has got a lot better and more sophisticated. And we play most of the instruments now.
So the gamelan brought you together?
I think, yeah. I mean, it's a way that I would say we've got all ages, teenage to people well over 60, you know.
Yes, although the gamelan belongs to the university, and they give us a certain amount of space to house it, we don't have to pay either to use the gamelan or to use the room.
But the instruments we're using today are not the university gamelan.
Oh no, that's true.
Pete has got his own gamelan, and that makes it easier to do performances anywhere and everywhere. Because otherwise, we would find that we'd have to be reliant on somebody opening up the university department, and it just makes it a lot easier to have our own instruments. They're smaller, but it's a complete slender gamelan.
Yes.
Sounds good. Wow, that is amazing, you know. Because of playing gamelan, you feel like a family with the group. How